Now that I've completed my color plan, I'm ready to start painting my Gnome Home Luminary. I have all my supplies ready to go. I would be looking at my color plan on my iPad. I printed mine out here so that you can see it as well. I want to make sure I have my watercolor paint ready. I like to have 2 cups of water, one for clean water for my paint and one for dirty water to clean my brush. I also want to have my paintbrushes and some paper towels handy. So I want to begin with painting my gnome home by working from light to dark. I want to go ahead and do the kind of overall tones for my bark of my tree here that I have for the outside of my house, so that I can layer darker colors on top to highlight the kind of texture that I've added to make it look like bark. I would also want to paint my purple polka dots before my red because my red is a little bit darker. It's always best to work lightest to darkest so that way I don't have to worry about any sort of mistakes or being able to add light colors on top of dark colors. For this assignment, I want to encourage you to not only use your watercolors straight out of the pan, but to also mix them. You can do that in the lid of your watercolor palette. So what's nice is to, of course, as we've talked about before, kind of manipulate the paint. So I'm gonna start with a brown wash for the outside of my tree bark texture, and that way I can go back in and I can darken it and I can build up the color and the tone. So I like to start with this kind of base layer of brown, and then I'm gonna go back into it and highlight those carved details and add some contrast and some depth and richness with darker colors. I might mix it with a little bit of deep maroon. I might mix it with some yellow to make it a little bit more of an ochre color, but I'm gonna begin by giving it a gentle wash all over the outside. I'm also gonna make sure that I carefully paint inside these little carved areas so that they don't shine through. I want it to look really finished all the way around. And then I can go back into it. So it's helpful to let this dry, of course, between colors and coats, but just to show you, I might then take my brown and get it a little bit thicker over here, and I'm gonna wash my brush and grab a little bit of this kind of maroon color. Now it's gonna give me more of a rich kind of cherry tree intensity that I really like. I think that's also going to look great with my purple and red from my mushroom caps. So I'm going to continue to paint the whole bottom before moving on to another area. Next, I'm going to move on to painting the grass and the base of my Gnome Home Luminary. I'm going to use the same idea, and I'm going to thin out some green and do an overall wash, and then go back in with a thicker, more dry brush technique to catch the texture that I created on my base so it looks grass-like. I'm going to be careful when I meet the edges of my house to create clean, precise lines. That might require going back in later with brown as well. But I will cleanly paint, making sure not to get the house, but also making sure that I also paint the edges so it looks really clean and finished all the way around. So here you can see I'm dabbing my paintbrush very dry. It almost makes a sticky sound, and I'm using it to lay down a little bit of a darker green. And this is a dry brush technique where I'm trying to catch just certain areas where it's been carved to create contrast and depth in the painting. So I get this really rich, more interesting green effect than if I had just done one wash of the same color green. So try building your colors and using both wet and dry brush techniques. Next, I'll begin adding the bright red for my mushroom cap. I'm excited to lay this down, but need to be very careful to have almost a medium consistency paint. I want it to be a nice wash, but I don't want it to run too much. So I want to be very, very careful and cautious about painting around these polka dots. So I'm going to take my time and gently work around them. I might even switch to a smaller paintbrush to make sure that I am very cautious and careful when painting around these polka dot areas. So I'll continue to do this, and then I'll go in and start painting the polka dots purple, just as I had planned. Next, I'll do the same layering effect of a lighter and darker color for my chimney as well. Now that my whole Gnome Home Luminary is painted, I'm going to go in one last time with a dark brown mixed with a tiny bit of black to add some contrast to my carved areas.